One of the biggest challenges during my IT career has been managing the storage requirements for the applications I supported. Storage space was always at a premium, which meant maintaining sufficient quantities of backups was a logistical nightmare. This lesson shows you how Amazon S3 changes everything. It offers a variety of practically unlimited and cost-effective storage that is available on demand, with unprecedented levels of durability and availability. Not only that, Amazon S3 also provides a way to easily host static websites and distribute your content around the world to your end users with low latency. So what is Amazon Simple Storage Service? Amazon Simple Storage Service, or S3 for short, provides developers and IT teams with secure, durable, and highly scalable cloud storage. Basically, it's file storage in the cloud. So let's look at some of the features of Amazon S3. The first of which is its durability. It's extremely durable and it provides 11 nines durability. Your data is redundantly stored across multiple facilities and multiple devices within each facility. We touched on 11 nines durability in an earlier lesson, but basically it means you're going to lose one file every 10 million years with an 11 nines durability. It's also highly available. Amazon S3 is designed for 99.99% availability. You can also choose the AWS region in which to store your data, so you can optimize latency, minimize your storage costs, and also address regulatory compliance. So if you have sovereign data that needs to be in a specific country, you can choose an Amazon region which satisfies that need. It's also very cost efficient. You can store huge amounts of data at a very low cost, and you only pay for what you use, and you're charged by gigabyte per month usage. There's a variety of different storage classes available, meaning you can categorize your data and pay only what you need to. It's also very secure. Amazon S3 supports SSL data transfer and data encryption once it's been uploaded. You can also control access to your data using IAM, and also specify object permissions using the S3 policies. Amazon S3 is also highly scalable. It allows you to store as much or as little data as you want. The storage is elastic, so you can scale up and down as required and only pay for what you're using. You can also configure notifications to be sent when objects are loaded into Amazon S3 via SQS, SNS, or even Lambda. This way you can set up workflows for your files. Amazon S3 is also highly performant. You can use multi-part uploads to maximize network throughput and resilience. Amazon S3 Transfer Acceleration is a new service that allows you to make use of edge locations to increase upload and download times. Amazon S3 is also fully integrated with many AWS products, such as CloudFront, CloudWatch, RDS, EBS, Lambda, etc. It's also really easy to use and has multiple connectivity options. You can use the Web Console, the Amazon Web Services command line interface, there's a mobile application, or you can use APIs or the Software Developer Kit. So let's take a look at some of the use cases of Amazon S3, the first of which is backup and archiving. Amazon S3 is ideal for this purpose. You can store a practically unlimited amount of data for when you need it. Traditional IT infrastructure would offer a finite storage capacity, so you'd have to manage what backups and archives you're going to retain. But with S3, that problem disappears, and you can retain as many backups as you want for a low cost. Amazon S3 is object-based storage that's accessible via a web interface, so you can store and retrieve data from anywhere on the web, so your users all around the world can have access to your files easily. S3 is great for content storage and distribution. You can offload your entire storage infrastructure into the cloud to minimize your costs. And you can also distribute your content directly from S3 to end users, or use S3 as a source for delivering content to Amazon CloudFront edge locations, so you can provide fast access to your information. It's also great for big data. Amazon S3 is designed to be used as a big data object store for things like photos, videos, financial data, etc. Using AWS products and services, you can also perform big data analytics. You can also use S3 to host static websites. It allows you to host your entire static website for a low cost, and it makes it a highly available hosting solution. Another key feature of Amazon S3 is for disaster recovery, as it offers a robust disaster recovery solution. All data stored on S3 is automatically replicated to a different availability zone, and you also have the option to copy it to other regions using cross-region replication. You can also add further recovery options by storing multiple versions of an object for point-in-time recovery. All Amazon S3 data is stored in something called buckets. It's basically a folder that you can read, write, and delete objects from. You can store as many objects as you want in a bucket, but objects are limited in size to 5 terabytes, and the largest put operation is 5 gigabytes. So if you're uploading very large files, you need to break them into smaller chunks. Buckets allow you to create granular security, so you can control who has create, delete, and retrieve permissions to each of your buckets and the files inside them. You can also control who has access to bucket logs, which are used to store information about access to your files and objects. And you can also choose the region where a bucket is stored. So how do you create a bucket? Well, the easiest way to create a bucket is using the web console or the command line interface. The bucket name you choose must be unique across all bucket names in Amazon S3. Amazon recommends that one way to help ensure uniqueness is to prefix your bucket names with the name of your organization. Bucket names must be at least 3 characters and no more than 63 characters long. Bucket names must be a series of 1 or more labels, and Amazon recommends separating labels with a single period. Bucket names can contain lowercase letters, numbers, and hyphens, and each label must start and end with a lowercase letter or a number. And here are some examples of valid bucket names. For example, my AWS bucket, or my period AWS period bucket, or my AWS bucket period 1. There are some bucket restrictions. By default, you can create up to 100 buckets in each of your AWS accounts. If you need to increase this, you have to contact AWS support. Bucket name ownership is not transferable. However, as a bucket is empty, you can delete it, and the name will eventually become available for use again. There is no limit to the number of objects that can be stored in a bucket, and there's no difference in performance whether you use many buckets or just have a couple. And you also cannot create a bucket within another bucket. Amazon S3 comes in a range of storage classes for different data categories. These are Amazon S3 Standard, Amazon S3 Standard Infrequent Access, Amazon S3 Reduced Redundancy Storage, and Amazon Glacier. So let's start by taking a look at Amazon S3 Standard. Standard is designed for high availability and durability, and it's used to store frequently accessed data. It's designed for 11 nines durability and 99.99% availability, and it's perfect for low latency and high throughput environments. Amazon S3 Standard is typically used for things like dynamic websites or cloud applications, mobile applications, or even just regular file storage. It's great for your business to use or end users to upload photos and videos, or just be able to access your files and objects in real time. Next is Amazon S3 Standard Infrequent Access, and this is designed for objects that are accessed less frequently, but when they are required, you need them rapidly. Standard Infrequent Access offers the same durability, throughput, and low latency of Standard, and it offers a lower cost per gigabyte, but it does have a per gigabyte retrieval fee. Standard Infrequent Access is typically used for data that you don't need very often, but when you do need it, you need it very quickly. Examples of this would be last month's reporting data, or database backups that were taken earlier this month. Reduced redundancy storage is a storage option that enables you to reduce your costs by storing non-critical reproducible data at lower levels of redundancy than Amazon's existing S3 standard storage. So it's designed for non-critical objects or reproducible objects that you can cope with a lower durability and lower availability. Reduced redundancy storage provides a cost-effective solution for distributing or sharing data that's been durably stored elsewhere. Or it's great for storing thumbnails, transcoded media, or other processed data that can be easily reproduced. So if you have a website application that people upload photos to, and then you recreate a thumbnail and store that, you can recreate that whenever you want. So this class of storage is perfect for storing things like the thumbnails. The final storage class is Amazon Glacier, and this is used to archive your data that you rarely access, and you can cope with a retrieval time of several hours. It still offers a durability of 11 nines, and it has the lowest cost available in Amazon storage. It also has a secure vault lock feature, so you can really secure your old archives and keep them for when you need them. Typical use cases would be to store database backups from months or even years ago, or compliance data that you think auditors might need several years down the line. I know Amazon Glacier would have been great in some of my previous employments where we had limited on-site storage capacity and we could only retain a certain amount of database backups. So when someone came along and said, hey, we urgently need a database backup from 5 years ago, there's absolutely no way I could have provided it to them. But with Glacier, that's definitely an option. This table just has a quick overview of the different storage classes and the differences between them. Now, things that you may see coming up in the exam are the durabilities and the availabilities, so it's worth remembering the percentages for each of the classes. Also here it mentions the latency times as well, so standard IA and RRS have millisecond response times, whereas Glacier has 4 to 5 hours response times. You can easily host static websites in S3 buckets. To do this, you need to configure your bucket for static website hosting. Then you upload your website code into your bucket. It's then accessible from the following URL. So the naming convention is bucketname.s3-website- then the name of the region your bucket sits in .amazonaws.com. Now it's worth remembering because it may well come up in the exam, so just remember the convention. But our Simplilearn bucket that sits in the US East 1 region would have a URL of simplilearn.s3-website-us-east-1, which is the region, .amazonaws.com. Now you can also use your own domains to point to your S3 buckets, and we'll look at that in the Route 53 lesson. You can also provide URL access to the objects in your buckets. So if you'd enabled website hosting, this first URL would provide you with the photo.jpg object. So it's effectively the same web address we looked at on the previous slide with /photo.jpg added. But you can also provide URL access without enabling static website hosting, as long as you set up the permissions appropriately. So this URL here requests the healthcheck.html object that we stored in our Simplilearn bucket. And you can see here it's https s3.amazonaws.com / then the name of our bucket, then the name of the file. Welcome to the Amazon S3 bucket demonstration, where we're going to create a new bucket and take a look at some of the features available. So we'll start by going to the Storage and Content Delivery section and clicking on S3, which will take us to the S3 dashboard. And we can see I only have one bucket in my account, which is called Databaseable. So we're going to click on Create Bucket and create a new one. So just to show you, if I try and create a bucket with just 2 characters in its name, it's going to give me an error and says it needs to be at least 3 characters long. On the other end of the scale, if I try and make it ridiculously long and click on Create, it's going to say it must be shorter than 63 characters. So that's just a quick reminder. And also, you can't create a bucket with underscores in. So if I just try and call it Simplilearn _bucket, it's going to generate an error. It's telling me that I can't create it with an underscore. And also, if I just create a bucket called Simplilearn, it's going to say that this bucket name is not available. Someone's already using that in the Amazon Web Services namespace, so I have to give it a unique name. So I'm going to call this simplilearn.demotest, and I'm going to place it in the US standard region. So let me click on Create. So yeah, there's our new bucket, and here are the properties to do with that bucket. So we can set the permissions. At the moment, me, as in the Databaseable owner, has permission to do anything with this bucket, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. Then there's the option here for static website hosting, which we mentioned, and I'm going to show you something with that shortly. Then there's the logging, so you can enable logging for your bucket. So you turn it on, you could select a bucket in which to put your log files. We're not going to do that now. Events. So we could set up an event, and it could be for a put operation, and we could prefix it with, say, which folder it was going to be in, or the suffix. So we could say any put operation for a JPEG file, set up an SNS topic or an SQS queue or even a Lambda function. Then we're going to look at the rest of the things here at a later demonstration in this lesson. So let's take a look at putting some data into our bucket. So let's click on Simply Learn Demo Test. It's telling me it's empty, so let's upload some files. It brings up the Upload API. So we're going to click on Add Files. And I've got 4 files here on my desktop. I've got the Health Check HTML file that you're familiar with from previous lessons. There's the Simply Learn key pair, which we use to access Windows EC2 instances. There's our Simply Learn private key, which we use to access Linux and Unix instances. And then there's the Simply Learn logo. So let's upload all of those. Let's click on Open. So now what we can do is click on Set Details. And we can choose where we want to put them. So we could say standard storage, or standard infrequent, or reduced redundancy. So I'm going to stick with standard, and we could also say whether we want to encrypt them. So we could use the Amazon S3 master key, or we could use the key management service. Now we don't need to encrypt these, so let's disable that, but that's where you have that option. And then we click on Set Permissions. And so it's granting me full control, so I can do anything I want with these files. And I can also make everything public, but I'm not going to do that yet. We can set the metadata, where you can specify common HTTP headers and content type and things like that, or you can just tick this box and let it figure out content types automatically, which we're going to do. Then we click on Start Upload. And on the right hand side here we can see our files being uploaded, and there you are. That was pretty quick. So let's take a look at one of them. Let's take a look at the Simply Learn logo. So I click on that and then move to the top right and click on Properties. So here we are. So now it tells you some information. It tells you that this file lives in the Simply Learn Demo Test bucket. There's the file name, has its size, its date, who uploaded it, etc. And then here there's a link, which is interesting. As we talked about, this is the URL to access this file directly. So what happens if we click on this? It's telling me there's an error. Okay, now why is that? It says access denied if you take a look here. And that's because it hasn't got public permissions, so we need to change that. So let's go back to our file, and if we click on the permissions option here, we can see it's just me that has access, so let's add more permissions. And let's grant everyone open and view permissions and click on Save. Now if we go back to the other window and let's refresh, there you are. So we now see that we can access that file directly using the URL, and there's the URL there. So s3.amazonaws.com/simplylearn.demotest, which is the name of our bucket, and then the name of the file. Now if we go back to our bucket, let's click on simplylearn.demotest and the properties. Now here is the static website hosting, which we talked about earlier. And the endpoint for it would be this, simplylearn.demotest.s3-website-US-East1, which is the region we're using, .amazonaws.com. So let's enable website hosting. Now it's asking for an index document, so this is the file, the default file that will open when you go to the website. So let's call it healthcheck.html, which is the file we've been using in our other tests. And we can set that as the error document as well, just because it's the only file we have that's suitable for this. Okay, and we click on Save. So now if I click on the endpoint, it gives us an error. We've got a 403 error, and it's for the same reason as we had when we tried to access the Simply Learn logo. It's because we haven't set permissions on the health check file. So let's go back and do that. So we click on the health check file, we click on permissions, we add permissions, and let's grant everyone open and view permissions and click save. Okay, so now if we go back to the other window and let's reload that, there we are. So now if we hit simplylearn.demotest.s3-website-useast1.amazon.aws.com, we get to see our health check file, which is this is a healthy web server. And that concludes the Bukkit demonstration.
Hey, want to become an expert in cloud computing?